All right, so should we look at the Lego Movie? So directed, of course, as you mentioned earlier, by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who sort of burst onto the scene with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which is a fine film, and then surprised everyone by making 21 Jump Street interesting and funny. And, of course, taking on a movie which, by all purposes, really should be just a giant ad for Lego, and they've managed to do something quite different with it. So written by Dan and Kevin Hageman, who, it's funny, these guys are brothers, I assume, and their only other writing work is Ninjago. So I guess they'd already made some sort of straight-to-DVD Lego thing before, based on these ninja characters.
This is the Ninjago thing that they were talking about doing a movie of as well now.
Like a feature... theatrical movie, you mean?
Yeah, remember, it's going back about 4 or 5 months now, I think, or maybe not that long, but we were talking in the news about how the Lego Movie 2 had already been greenlit, but they were also trying to make a Ninjago movie based on the kind of Ninja Lego thing.
Yep.
But I guess if they've already done some straight to...
Yeah, I think this was pretty under-the-radar, low-key stuff. And the other story thing that they've had a go at is the Hotel Transylvania story, which I quite enjoyed. It wasn't a fantastic animation, but it did the job.
Yeah, I remember you saying you really liked it. I didn't think much of it, but it was all right.
And of course, yes, so Phil Lord and Chris Miller did the screenplay for this as well. It stars Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks, Will Arnett, Will Ferrell, or at least the vocal talents thereof. Now, I'm obviously have a bit of a contentious issue with Chris Pratt being in films in general, because I do love him on the show Parks and Rec, but I feel that is his one character that he can play. He is a great exception because this character is just so optimistic and such a man-child anyway that his voice suits it perfectly. So I could not have picked anyone better than Chris Pratt to voice the main character in this film. I think it was fantastic. I'll still yet to see how it works out with Guardians of the Galaxy. Here's a little clip.
Yes! Overpriced coffee.
That's $37.
Awesome!
Everything is awesome.
Oh my gosh, I love this song!
It's cool when you're part of the team. Everything is awesome.
Ah, no! Guys, wait up! Where am I?
Come with me if you want to not die.
What is happening?
You're the special, and the prophecy states that you're the most important person in the universe. That's you, right?
Yes. That's me.
Relax, everybody. I'm here.
Batman? Awesome!
Who are you here to see?
I'm here to see your butt.
Oh my gosh!
Ow. Wham. First try.
My fellow master builders.
Hello.
Lord Business plans to end the world as we know it. There is yet one hope. The special has arisen.
I know what you're thinking. He is the least qualified person to lead us. And you are right.
I've heard a lot about this film before it came out. One of the problems with this late release date is my expectations were built up pretty high. I got to say, I still think this film really does work on a lot of different levels. I'm not sure whether it works for kids, to be honest, because it is quite subversive and there is a lot of stuff going on. And me personally, I spent a lot of time sort of admiring the thoughtfulness and all these layers that they had going with the screenplay, and I sort of didn't get as invested in this simple character story as I would have liked to. Not like a film like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which is a good comparison because that's a wacky out there story, but I mean it's all about that character and his relationship with his father and the girl, and there's just a really simple humanist story at the core of that, and that's why I love that film, because it works on that level, and it's also really batshit crazy.
And a similar sort of thing with the main character. He's an outsider, and he's learning that what makes him different is what makes him special, and so on. And so they're similar things. But...
And I guess that's what I wanted to feel with this film, but I didn't because I was too distracted by everything else that was going on, I guess. So it did work for me on a lot of levels, but just not in a pure emotional enjoyment level. I wasn't really caring that much about the central character, which was a shame. Now, one thing I did love about this film is the fact that they didn't ever cop out with the Lego sort of technology. Obviously it's all CGI, but it's made to look like stop motion, but they never have a little effect with some CGI fire. You know, they actually use little bits of Lego fire. So everything
those
that
little
exists,
round buttons you get.
So they just every single thing that you see is made of Lego, and that's just amazing. Even the ocean. So I love that, and this just really just took me straight back to my childhood. So I guess I was just saying how I didn't really connect to the characters, but it did connect with me emotionally because there were things that I was seeing up on the screen that really made me pine for my my wasted youth of just spending so many hours, probably days and weeks if you add it all up, playing with my Lego.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
I really enjoyed it, and yeah, like you said, it's hard coming into it 2 months later after everyone has just been raving about it. I think that it's definitely got a few problems. It seems to have a pace that is just relentless and kind of an ADD attitude towards it. Never really lets up, and particularly the action in the second and third acts, it feels far too long, and it seems to get sort of carried away with itself. It reminded me a little bit of how Wreck-It Ralph had a really excellent first half hour, really, really excellent, and then it just sort of got a little bit carried away and it still worked really well, it's just that it wasn't anywhere near as effective at the beginning. The thing about the kids, we saw it in a cinema full of kids. The following day we saw Muppets Most Wanted in a cinema full of kids as well. In the Lego movie, kids seemed really distracted, talking the whole way through, which is, that's what kids do generally, but they didn't really seem to be that interested in the movie. It seemed to have lost them pretty quickly. With the Muppets, they were nearly dead silent and really laughing at the jokes. So I think that the Lego movie definitely worked more. I mean, we were definitely the ones laughing more in the cinema during the Lego movie than, I think in the Muppets Most Wanted, it was a pretty evenly shared thing between adults and children. The balance was a little bit better. With those negatives out of the way, though, the movie is really damn funny, and it's really well written. It's got these guys' fingerprints all over it. I really like the story, how they've actually bothered to really think through a proper story and a proper. It's kind of like a parody of a hero's kind of story where they've got the evil instrument is the Craggle, which is the crazy glue, and then what you find out later is the piece of resistance ties in really well with the Craggle, and it's a really, really perfectly thought through thing. Also, this issue of conformity and whether like with Lego, do you play by the instructions or do you use it to create your own stuff? So really, obviously, they thought through the concept of a Lego movie properly instead of just going, well, let's just put up some products that we've got from Lego on the screen and we'll just make a really sort of mundane kind of, almost like a straight to DVD kind of movie. This is so far beyond that. I think the message of the individuality got kind of lost somewhere later on amongst all the crashes and bangs and runnings and jumpings, and there's far too much of that stuff. There's also a weird thing, I won't spoil anything with the plot, but the issue is being about, it's anti-conformist. There's two issues I've got with that, is that they decide to fight the battle against the conformers by conforming, which I thought was a weird little, I mean, that might be being too pedantic for a kid's movie, but that was a weird kind of, didn't gel properly with the message for me. And then the other thing is the really fantastic Everything is Awesome song, where the entire city sings this song together, and it's about everyone being exactly the same and liking the same mundane sort of stuff, and everyone being completely identical in their tastes and liking the same dumb sitcom. That Where Is My Pants sitcom is really, really funny. Really good idea. But it's strange how that's bled over into popular culture now, where the song Everything is Awesome, which is so just like everything else you hear in the last couple of years, this electro-pop kind of thing, now everyone's really embraced that song and everyone really likes that song, and they don't like it ironically either.
Yep.
So it is a weird, that's not the movie maker's fault. They use the song really well in the movie, but it has a weird real world implication.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
life imitating art.
Yeah, sure. But above and beyond all that, all the flaws are really easy to ignore, because when it's funny, it's damn funny, and they spend a lot of time throwing jokes at the screen.
Oh, the jokes are fantastic, and yeah, I just got to admire a kids' film that has built itself. I mean, the first half hour is the best for sure, and the way they construct that world. Forgive the pun, but there's so many shades of 1984 in that universe.
Yeah.
And the way that it is all put together like that, it's really quite astounding. And I guess that was the thing that I loved on one hand, but at the other hand, it did take me out of whatever story there was, because I was constantly marveling at all these very, very clever ideas that were all the way through it. But what sort of a Lego guy were you anyway? Did you follow all the instructions, or did you make your own bits and pieces?
Oh, I don't actually remember that well. I know I had heaps, and they were just jumbled up. I'm pretty sure that we just used to build whatever random crap we had in the tubs.
Yep.
And then being older, actually, I love that they put the Millennium Falcon in, because that was, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago. I walked down to the store to go get it, realized it was $250, this Lego Millennium Falcon, and I remember walking out of the store, getting halfway home, and then just turning around and thinking, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to buy it. And then spending 2-3 days putting it together, and it is just... So I love following the kit as much as playing around with... maybe not so much as an adult. I think you lose that kind of
the creativity.
Yeah. Well, just sheer enjoyment out of kind of doing what is kind of seen as like a pointless kind of task. With at least with the Millennium Falcon, I was seeing it as it's something I can put up on a bookshelf and it'll sit there for a while. Yeah. In actual fact, it's in a cupboard somewhere. It's fallen apart. But what about you?
I definitely followed the instructions as well. But there were with the sets. I loved having the sets. I had a Robin Hood fortress castle thing. Castle Lego was my thing. Right. I loved the knights on horseback and stuff like that. But I remember saving up I think it was $90 for this Robin Hood thing, and that took me months and months, and it was a good exercise in learning how to save money. Mum was like, I'm not going to buy it for you, but you're welcome to buy it yourself. And I was like, all right, I'll do that.
I'll do that then.
She might have matched me dollar for dollar, I can't remember, but it was it took a while, and it was so rewarding when I finally got that, and I played the shit out of that thing. I made up so many worlds in my bedroom with these things, and there was one thing that I made. I put together this sometimes I followed the rules, sometimes I didn't, and I put together this amazing plane. It was like an aircraft carrier, had tiny small planes inside it and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I was really reluctant to take it apart when I'd finally created it. So that's the sort of the bittersweet thing about Lego, is when you do create something amazing, eventually you're going to have to tear it down, start again, do something else. But
sure. It's like those Buddhists making those paintings in the sand and then they just wash them away.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was like as a Lego player guy.
That's right.
Just like a Buddhist.
Well, the sweetest thing about the movie is that it manages to bring back all these memories of childhood without it seeming tacky, and not once was I ever really thinking this is a promotional product. No. Which is
I mean, it clearly is, but it's they did such a good job by getting you past that and actually telling a story.
And they seem to know, I mean, kind of like how Marvel seems to know its audience, Lego seems to know who to outsource. I mean, they've bought the best licenses off of popular culture icons and stuff to make those sets, and then also to make the video games. Like, you're a big fan of those Lego video games, Lego Batman, Lego Star Wars. Yeah.
There's Lego. They're everything now. I think there's Pirates of the Caribbean, Harry Potter, and stuff. I think I've only really played the Batman and Star Wars ones, but they're great.
But just the fact that those games are actually worth playing and that those sets are actually worth building means that they are. It's a product, but it's a quality product that a lot of people relate to. So.
Yeah, because there was a time in the 90s, man, where Lego was pretty much dead. Kids were just not playing with Lego because computers had come in, and that was the new exciting thing. Everyone was about playing computer games, and everyone was having personal, the PCs in the house and stuff. And Lego sales were just dwindling, and then they started to branch out into making these games. Originally, their computer games were very primitive, I guess. It was more about creating buildings on the screen as opposed to the adventure storylines they did later on. But yeah, the licensing thing they did with Indiana Jones and Star Wars, like, that's just a genius plan. Like, that saved the company, like, branching out and actually taking other things and making Lego sets out of them instead of their own range of city and castle or whatever. I mean, that really saved the company, and now look, they're stronger than ever. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that company still continues to be strong.
Yeah, sure. It's a shame we can't do a spoiler section for this movie because it has some things occur towards the end, particularly with dealing with the idea of their creator and things like that have really took me completely by surprise. I'm amazed that it hasn't been spoiled yet.
It got spoiled for me. I was so irritated. It was the day before we went to see it. I was listening to a podcast and it got spoiled.
Oh, no way. Because when that whole different section happens, it is really, it works so well, and it could come off as really corny and cliched, but
I think it worked too.
Yeah, it's really nice, really sweet.
Yeah.
And ties in with the story really well. This is a really properly thought through story, even if it does get sidetracked along the way and there's a little bit too many crashes and bangs and so on. Yeah, so pretty damn good.
So how would you compare it to the other Phil Lord and Chris Miller films? Is it up there with those two for you?
21 Jump Street I rewatched a few months ago and is still really funny. It doesn't have that element of surprise, I think. Most people, when you saw 21 Jump Street, the remake, expectations were so low that to have it even be pretty damn amusing was, I think that I inflated it in my mind. I really enjoy it. It's really nice. It's pretty funny. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, I just think is ingenious, really inventive, really clever. This, I think, falls somewhere in the middle for me. I mean, just because it is patchy, and I did get bored because it feels too long, and just because it doesn't work for children, that I can ignore that because I'm not a child. It doesn't need to work for them for it to work for me. But I don't know. I mean, it felt patchy. It could have been shorter, and I didn't appreciate all the endless action. So
it was weird because they've got the license for Marvel characters as well, because there are Marvel Lego games, and I assume there's Marvel sets. It was strange that they only decided to go with one of the big comic companies, because there's DC characters in this, but there's no Marvel characters.
All right. Oh, they actually have Marvel, do they?
Yeah, they have it. Yeah, so we thought that'd be a great opportunity to have both those characters existing in the same film. I mean, that was actually, believe it or not, the first cinematic version of Wonder Woman.
Yes,
that's ever happened. Yeah,
I know, which is pretty funny.
I guess maybe there was, I don't know what the studio was that put out the film, but maybe they had more ties with Warner Brothers and DC than they did with Disney, and that was the reason. But I thought they sort of missed a trick there. But anyway, it was great to see so many of those properties coming in for a little cameo here and there. Won't spoil any of them, but it was great.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, but do you think that it was a little overlong and it was a bit too bombastic in parts?
Yeah, I wouldn't say overlong. To me, it felt like it ran the time that it should. I was happy with the running time. It just, as is the case with a lot of these kids' films, the third act is always pretty chaotic, and you do start to lose your way. And I started to, I wasn't as into it as I was with the first half hour or so. Yeah.
So I think what happens in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs in the third act is that when it starts to get really, really, really bonkers, and then therefore when it's going over the top with all the action, it's still interesting because you're just so perplexed as to how they actually got to this point where there's huge food raining down from the sky and so on. With this, it was just a series of, it kind of felt a little bit like the end of Captain America 2. And it's just, they have to go do something, so they're just going to fly a lot of things and crash into a lot of things until they get the thing done. But they did switch it around at the end with the thing we can't talk about.
Yeah.
But
yeah, apart from the thing we can't talk about, it was a relatively conventional hero's journey, as you said before, and that's fine, I guess. But I kind of expect a little bit more from them. But anyway, it was. I really, really enjoyed the Lego Movie. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, let's.